listed the animal as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. All imports of polar bear trophies are banned. Under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, importing polar bear-related products was forbidden from 1972 to 1994 and limited from 1994 to 2008. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service had to provide licenses in order to import trophies from sport hunting excursions that had taken place in Canada. The bear has to be taken from a location with quotas established using sensible management techniques as part of the permission procedure. Numerous polar bear trophies for sport hunting have been brought into the country since 1994. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service produced a draft conservation management plan for polar bears in 2015 to assist them meet the requirements of the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species Act. Conservation status, threats, and controversies. Due to their distant home ranges and low population densities, polar bear population estimates and trends are difficult to accurately measure. Researchers may face risks while doing fieldwork on polar bears. According to the Intermate, Union for Conservation of Nature, there are 22,000 to 31,000 polar bears in the world as of 2015. The population trend is unclear. However, polar bears are classified as vulnerable under criterion A3C, indicating an anticipated population drop of around 30% over the following 3 generations, or around 34.5 years, as a result of decline in area of occupancy, range of occurrence, and/or quality of habitat. Climate change, hazardous chemicals and pollution, problems with shipping, oil and gas development, and other factors all pose risks to polar bears. The World Wildlife Fund believes that the polar bear is a crucial indicator of the health of the Arctic environment. Because polar bears in danger are often a warning that something is wrong with the Arctic marine environment, studies examine polar bears to understand better what is occurring throughout the Arctic. Climate change, the Arctic Climate Impact Assessment, the United States Geological Survey, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and numerous top polar bear biologists have all expressed grave worries about the effects of climate change, with some projecting extinction by 2100. Due to habitat loss, malnutrition or famine is the main threat posed by climate change. Polar bears use a sea ice platform to hunt seals. Bears are forced to the shore before they have accumulated enough fat stores to withstand the period of limited food in the late summer and early fall due to the sea ice melting earlier in the year as a result of rising temperatures. Additionally, because there is less sea ice, bears must swim far, which depletes their energy reserves and can occasionally result in drowning. Little sea ice. The capacity of pregnant females to construct adequate maternity dens is impacted by changes in sea ice, which is one of many other facets of polar bear life that are anticipated to be impacted by a warming environment in addition to nutritional stress. Females have to swim farther to get to preferred land denning places when the distance between the pack ice and the coast grows. The traditional subterranean dens of bears would be impacted by permafrost thawing, and mild winters might cause den roofs to collapse or lose some of their insulation properties. Increased ice mobility may result in greater distances for moms and young cubs to travel when they return to seal hunting sites in the spring for polar bears that now den on multi-year ice. It would be easier for parasites and germs that cause disease to proliferate. The length of the polar bear feeding season is shortening as ice floe breakdown in western Hudson Bay occurs 3 weeks sooner than it did 30 years ago as a result of rising air temperatures. The average weight of lone, and possibly pregnant, female polar bears was around 290 kilograms, 640 pounds, in 1980 and 230 kilograms, 510 pounds, in 2004. This indicates a deterioration in the polar bear's bodily condition. The population of the western Hudson Bay decreased by 22% between 1987 but as of 2017, the population was described as steady. The U.S. Geological Survey predicts that 2/3 of polar bears will be extinct by 2050 as a result of sea ice melting brought on by climate change. In Alaska, the consequences of shrinking sea ice have led to increasing fatality rates. The expansion of polar bear habitat into new areas is a recent trend. Although not unheard of, polar bear sightings have been rising. They are remaining on land for extended periods of time during the summer, especially in North Canada, and going deeper inland. This might lead to an increase in human-bear conflict as well as a greater reliance on terrestrial food such as geese eggs, birds, and caribou. Predictions. Based on reasonable forecasts for the reduction in summer sea ice brought on by climate change, Stephen Amstrad and other U.S. Geological Survey scientists have estimated that 2/3 of the world's polar bears may go extinct by 2050. However, the validity of this study has been questioned. The Canadian Arctic archipelago, areas off the northern Greenland coast, and bear populations in Europe, Asia, and Alaska may all see declines. They could completely vanish from Greenland and the northern Canadian coast by 2080, leaving only declining populations in the interior Arctic archipelago. Some polar bear populations in traditionally colder regions of the Arctic, however, could momentarily benefit from a milder climate since multi-year ice that is too thick for seals to produce polar bears diverged from brown bears approximately 400,000 and 600,000 years ago, and they have persevered through previous climatic fluctuations. As the sea ice they depend on to hunt seals melts, it has been suggested that polar bears will be able to adapt to eating terrestrial food sources. 200. The majority of polar bear biologists, however, believe that brown bears will eventually outcompete polar bears in this terrestrial niche, causing a population collapse since polar bears won't be able to completely compensate for the loss of calorie-rich seal fat with terrestrial foods. Controversy over species protection. The fact that estimates of the polar bear's world's population have risen over the past 50 years and are currently steady is frequently juxtaposed with warnings about the species' future. In the early 1970s, some estimates of the world's population ranged from 5,000 to 10,000. In the 1980s, other estimates ranged from 20,000 to 40,000. The population of the planet is now estimated to be between 22,000 and 31,000, 42, or 20,000 and 25,000. There is no evidence to suggest the polar bear populations are doing well generally, despite the positive return of individual populations. The apparent discrepancy between historic and projected population increases can be attributed to a number of factors, including the fact that 1950s and 1960s estimates were made largely on anecdotes from explorers and hunters rather than scientific surveys. Second, harvesting restrictions were put in place that helped this fish species recover. Third, the amount of sea ice has been impacted by current climate change impacts to variable degrees in various regions. The Nunavut government and many residents of the North have opposed the U.S. effort to include polar bear under the Endangered Species Act. Conservation groups and Canada's Inuit have taken different sides in the debate over the polar bear's designation under endangered species legislation. Many Inuit feel that the polar bear population is growing, and that commercial sport hunting will certainly face limits as a result.